This is part 2 to the story, The Soul of Dr. Rooosha. Down in the description, if you're having trouble finding part 1, there'll be a link there for you. I'm going to pick up right where I left off from part 1. As he said that, he placed the cotton ball in his right hand, but when he opened it, it was gone. Most of them saw Dr. Rooosha play around with sleight-of-hand illusions before, so they weren't too surprised. Tony, who was the youngest and newest, didn't know Dr. Rooosha was so good at it. Everyone watched as he reached in his... Everyone watched as he, Dr. Rooosha, then reached his empty hand up to his ear, saying, "But there always seems to be more cobwebs." He pulled another cotton ball out of his ear. "So, we knocked those down too," he said, as he made that one disappear as well. "But everyone has them." He pulled a new one out of John's ear. "See, others have them too," Rooosha said, as he pointed at Bill, who had one actually sitting on the top of his bald head. Rooosha said, "Then we notice we have some that we didn't even know about. Pick up your hat, Bill." Bill picked up his chef's hat, and it was filled with cotton balls. The doctor went on, "But one day we start to discover them, more and more." He pulled one out of his shoe. Everyone, check your shoes," he cried as if it was an emergency. To this day, no one knows how he got a cotton ball in every shoe. They figured Bill was in on the hat trick, but when each of them found one in their own shoe, they were genuinely surprised. After they clamored over that, Rooosha said, "So, we try to do a real thorough cleaning. We try to clean them up and throw them off." As he said that, he flung his arms as if he was throwing 2 baseballs. He remained staring toward the oversized windows, then showed a face of frustration, saying, "It is then that we realize there are other rooms in our soul we didn't even know about or think about, and when we look outside the window. See?" There was a cotton ball on the side ledge of the window. It was now outside on the balcony, just as he said. It is then that we wonder if we are ever going to get rid of the cobwebs. The problem is not the cobwebs. We can knock them down. Our cleaning staff is the best, and we all pick up after ourselves, but cobwebs will always come back because the problem is not the cobwebs. The problem is the spider," he said as he opened his hand, revealing a spider. "We must get rid of the spider." Judy shouted, "Okay, that's a spider!" Rooosha placed a glass over it to contain it. He went a little deeper by asking, "What is the spider?" John, a recovering alcoholic, said, "Could be drugs or alcohol. I know it messed up any clear thinking I had." Lafayette said, "It could be another person, a toxic relationship." Patrick said, "The World Wide Web." Rooosha waited a few seconds for more to answer. The chef spoke up. "Could be what we eat," Dr. Rooosha said. "Nothing you cook." Bill confirmed, "No, of course not. I mean what we eat mentally, what we put in our minds, and what we take into our hearts, what we take to heart, what we take in from all around us." Jill said, "Garbage in, garbage out." Dr. Levi, Paul, said, Bad philosophy can cause a foggy head. Dr. Rooosha agreed with all of them and offered a leading question. What or who really determines how many webs are up there in our head? Tony said, the spider. Rooosha said, and who let the spider in, ignores it, or kills it? Mark did a Smokey the Bear impression. Only you can prevent forest fires. Roosh's face lit up and his eyes sparkled as he said, yep, really, the spider is your soul. And until that is changed, you'll continue to have cobwebs. You may allow things to affect, we may allow things to affect us, but people and situations can only drive you nuts if you hand them the car keys. Rooosha always spoke not just with his lips, but with his whole body. As he said that, the last line, he produced a set of keys as if pulling them out of thin air. He set them on the table in front of him, grasped the cloth, and pulled it extremely hard and fast. The whole tablecloth didn't come out, just a little small one, the size of a washcloth. With amusement, he announced, and now, time for our next presentation, representation, and inspiration. I introduce you to... He cupped his hands around his mouth to project his voice. Willie the Magnificent! Dr. Roosh's mansion had all kinds of hidden rooms and passages. They made full use of them by allowing Willie the Magnificent to enter the room from above. They all cheered. Willie was a simple street performer Rooosha had met a few years ago. He continued with his introduction. Maybe you've seen Willie before. He is in no way related to the everlasting Wonka or Charlie Bucket, but he does love candy and is an amazing magician. Please give him your attention. Rooosha sat down to enjoy the presentation too. Willie's words captivated their interest as he explained, I brought with me today 3 tins. He opened the cans or tins so that they could see 2 of them were empty and 1 was full of mints. He asked, how many of you have played the game of shells, where someone moves around a shell, 3 shells, and you try to pick the one with something under it? Several hands went up. John said, I not only played it, I've won a lot of money that way, doing it too. Perfect, Willie proclaimed. So, I'll be that someone and move these tins around, and your name? Johnny the Magnificent, Johnny boasted. Willie loved it. Okay, John persisted. The Magnificent, Willie said, yes, maybe we're related. Brother from another mother, Mark added. Tony said, same middle name too, the. Willie loved their enthusiasm. Yes, we share that with Frosty, Kermit, and, Jill added, Smokey the Bear. Great, Willie continued with his instructions. So, John, the Magnificent Goose, I heard about you. You keep your eye on the full one. He closed all the tins, then slid them around. Everyone's eyes were following the one they knew was full. Willie stopped the shuffle and looked up. Everybody got it? Trust John to pick the full one. John pointed to the middle one that was on the left before Willie moved them all around, trying to confuse them. Willie asked, are you sure? They all agreed, yes. Willie picked up the one on the left. They all heard the mints rattling around as he shook it vigorously. Okay, let's try again, challenged Willie. He shook it again and reminded them, Keep your eyes on this full one. Keep your eyes on the full one, he said again. He slid the 3 tins around and stopped as he called, "Ready? John, what do you think?" John said, "The middle one again." He looked around. All heads were nodding yes. Once again, Willie picked up the left one and shook it. Again, they heard its fullness. Willie suggested, "How about we do it with just 2 tins?" It didn't seem fair for Willie, but they figured they were bound to get the right one with only 2 to keep an eye on. Willie reminded them, "Just watch the one you know is full." He shook it again so they'd know. He moved the tins around as if it would fool them. Jill shouted, "Stop!" Willie froze. She laughed. "Could I pick?" John said, "Sure. I was going to pick the opposite of what I know is the full one." Jill confidently said, "No, it's this one," as she pointed to the one she had kept her eye on. Willie slid forward the one Jill insisted on. He asked, "What makes this one different from the other 2? He picked it up and gave it a loud shake. Several spoke over the rattling sound. "It is full," they agreed. Young Jill was so proud as she smiled at John, then looked around to see if anyone was acknowledging her correct guess. Willie tapped the top of the tin as he asked, "Are you sure? You think you got it right?" Jill replied, "We all did." He opened it, revealing that it was empty after all. He slid the chosen one back, then closed it and claimed, "Maybe it is empty because the mints are in an unexpected place, like, under that bowl of fruit in the center of the table," Dr. Rooosha suggested, "or inside the oranges." Willie exclaimed, "That would be cool." Bill picked up the bowl. There was a pile of mints there. While they were looking, Willie slid one of the 2 tins forward as he asked again, "So, what makes this one different from the other 2? No one was sure if they should answer. Is it empty or is it full? So, to remove all doubt, he opened it, revealing that it was full again. They gave a standing ovation. However, he wasn't done. "Why did you believe that it was empty or that it was full? 'Cause I told you? Because you saw it? Why? Because of what your because of what your eyes told you, or because of what your ears told you?" John had lots of street smarts and said, "Because of what we heard." "I used to herd sheep," Mark attempted a dry humor again. He was trying to get Julie to roll her eyes again. It worked. Several people at the table began to realize that Willie had shaken the tin they picked each time, but he had not shown them by opening it up. Tony had the same theory, but wasn't sure. Maria said, "But, we saw the mints. Then they were gone. I like this game." John admitted, "You're good. You are good. You could make a fortune on the streets." Willie smirked. "It's illegal to gamble on the streets, John Goose." Dr. Rooosha said, "A fortune in tips, he means, I'm sure." Willie nodded, then asked, "Would all of you mind if I share a little more about the personal meaning behind this trick for me?" Dr. Rooosha asked them. "Well, what do you say?" They began to clap again, so Willie shared. "Okay, so I was in a detox center when I was starting to work on this trick. And I took a few things. I saw some of the great illusionists like Penn and Teller and combined it with a few ideas I had of my own. You see, some people had lost their patience with me, and they were convinced that I was empty, like the empty tin. If you start to believe that, and maybe even tell yourself you are empty, after a while, you'll buy into that myth. You may have a hard time finding your own heart and knowing where it is, where you stand spiritually as a person, but you do have a soul. People may tell you you're full of mints or you're full of something else. And it ain't sweet smelling mints. But ladies and gentlemen, I am so glad Dr. Rooosha invited me here today to share with all of you. What is important is what you know about your own life and what is really in your heart, regardless of what others say. May you all fill your hearts with good things, sweet-smelling things. People may tell you you're worthless and empty, but you are valuable. Thank you. With that being said, he threw something on the ground that created a thick cloud of smoke, and in the magician's classic manner, he disappeared from sight. They loved it and hoped that wherever he was, he could hear their cheers and applause. Dr. Rooosha was thrilled that it all went even better than he could have imagined. He stood to his feet and said, "Looks can be deceiving, huh?" Maria said, "When you introduced Willie," several people shouted, "The Magnificent!" She smiled and said, "I was going to add that. When he came in, I wasn't sure if he was a tattoo artist or musician or magician, or I didn't know what to think." John added, "He was really good." Judy said, "I didn't like all his tattoos and those." She motioned toward her face, grabbing at her earlobes, tugging on her lip, and pinching her nose as she referred to his body piercings. John said, "Hey, at least he didn't have, 25 necklaces holding his neck and head up." "You mean like a rap artist, you mean?" asked Tony. John clarified, No, I mean not chains like rap artists wear, but some African tribes, they have these tight necklaces going vertically up their neck, you know?" Bill said, "Some put sized plates in their lips." Dr. Rooosha said, "Yes, I saw a National Geographic special where one of the young girls said, 'I don't care if I never get a husband, I'll never do that as a sign of my beauty and acceptance.' Different from our culture, huh?" Maria said, "That is the opposite of American culture." "Yes, it is. To feel accepted by some communities, you have to even alter your looks." Dr. Rooosha said, "Like some gangs," John added. Like some gangs, John added. "In America?" Maria asked shockingly. Mark confirmed, "Not just America, all over major hardcore cities, there are groups of people, gangs, who require branding or sometimes self-mutilation." Jill spoke up. "I heard some gangs require you to hurt or even kill an innocent random person randomly. Someone you don't even know." Maria blurted out, "Sheesh, and we thought the Mexico mob was bad." Judy asked, "What do you mean, branding?" Mark explained, like a farmer brands his cattle with a red-hot poker, leaving a ranch symbol or logo or initials. Judy's face scrunched up as she tried to joke a little. "Remind me to never join a gang." That brought some good laughs. Mark said, Wearing a pantsuit or dress coat and tie is a lot less painful, but if you're a businessman or woman, you'd be laughed out of a job if you didn't." John said, I went for one of my court hearings in shorts, and they kicked me out of the courtroom. Bill said, many high-end restaurants, my eyes messed up. Bill said, many high-end restaurants require you wear a jacket, a suit coat, and if you don't have one, they will provide one or you're not allowed in at all to that restaurant. Dr. Rooosha mentioned, years ago, almost everyone wore hats, men and women. That hat had to be removed when indoors or it was disrespectful. China! Lafayette said louder than he intended to. Everyone looked at him. He said, sorry, that was much louder than I meant it to be. Dr. Rooosha encouraged him to continue with his thought. He did so by saying, in China, they sometimes, in some parts, some of them force their women to walk several feet behind the men, and from when girls are really, really young, they force their feet into extremely small shoes to keep their feet really small. Mr. Miff said, a lot of cultures used to, still do, treat women inferior. Dr. Levi added, some cultures require their women to cover their faces. Mohammed, one of the Muslims there, said, that is for the keeping of tradition, and the women are not forced to. They do it out of respect for themselves. There is nothing wrong with that. Dr. Rooosha clarified he's not saying that it is wrong. Dr. Levi offered his apology. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not wrong, just different, a different culture. Look at Orthodox Jews. They dress a certain way, and they don't cut their facial hair. And get this, even if they are bald, some of them wear a hat with their original side locks, what some call sideburns, sewed into the sides of their hats. They are actually trying to stick strictly and literally with Levitical law. Do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edge of your beard, from Leviticus 19, verse 27. People who are Orthodox Jews could not even share a meal in the same presence of anyone who is not Jewish. Jill said, my mom was Jewish. I remember her telling me that. Yeah, not a wrong or right practice or custom, just different. I am Jewish, but don't agree with that. Not that I say that they are wrong. I just don't agree and abide by that rule or that practice. John asked, but you are still considering yourself as Jewish, right? I notice you have the hat. I hope that's not offensive to call it a hat. Dr. Levi laughed. We call it a kippah. Jill said, I thought it was called a yarmulke. Dr. Levi clarified, yes, depending on your pronunciation, it is a yarmulke. Some call it a kippah or a kippah. In Yiddish, more modern Jewish language, I guess you'd call it, as compared to traditional Hebrew. We'd call it kippah. Again, it is worn to fulfill the customary requirements held by Orthodox Halachic authorities that the head be covered. Muhammad said, nothing wrong with that. The two men of different faiths smiled at each other. Dr. Rooosha was glad they respected each other and wished that all Muslims, all Jews, all humans could get along like this. He spoke softly. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. We could talk all day about what people do according to customs, traditions, their faith, and why they do them. But I'd like to just say one more thing on this subject, specifically regarding the Jewish race, if I may, Dr. Levi. Dr. Levi graciously replied, "Of course. This is your home." Rooosha asked, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but to this day, mainly just in Israel, there are priests who wear big, tall hats with a small box built into it. They wear that because they're observing their literal translation, that they are to have God's word not figuratively inside their hearts, or not just figuratively inside their hearts or on their minds, but literally on their." Rooosha held up his hand to his forehead. "Literally on their mind." Dr. Paul Levi confirmed. "Yes, you got it pretty right. Not bad for a Gentile. Haha. Like you said, we could talk all day, probably just about Jewish heritage, let alone other cultures, creeds, religions, and races. The Jews alone have all kinds of levels of degrees and sects and practicing of their faith. There are the traditional, the modern Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, the secular, and what we wear, especially hats, tells everyone what we want them to know about us. It doesn't always accurately describe what they believe in their hearts or how they act, but it should. Some strongly believe and say Arabs should be expelled or transferred from Israel, and they say peaceful coexistence for Israel and an independent Palestine state is not possible. I don't agree.